Shalom Israel. First and foremost, I want to give all praises to Yahweh, Bahashim, Yahweh Shai, Bahashim, Rechachadash. Double honors to the apostle of the Great Millstone for teaching this truth. And peace and salutations to all the Yakim out there, kicking this word in truth and sincerity. Now, this is a video I had stumbled upon earlier today. And this is, the guy's name is Tim Pool. He has another channel, I don't know the name of it now. But basically he's a journalist, and he's actually, I would say, a fairly good journalist, non-biased. He's a Edomite, Ammonite, I'm not sure who is, what his father actually is, not that important, but basically my point is, regardless of that, I really trust his journalism. And here he's talking about the next civil war that's on the horizon now, and he actually gets into how this he gets into the racial elements in this civil war, and basically highlighting the race riots that are on the horizon. So I'm just gonna go ahead and let a couple minutes of this play, and afterwards I'm just gonna close it right out. I'm not gonna get into any scriptures. I'm not well versed or learned in prophecy on civil war or the race riots. Still pretty much a babe in this. So, but I wanted, as a watchman, I wanted to make sure I got this out there to the Yakim and make sure at least some of you seen this. I'll go ahead and let this video play.
We are in a cold civil war. Funny, I'm sure there's going to be a ton of people who look at the title of this video and say something like, Tim's being hyperbolic and Tim's exaggerating, and I'm actually citing a Princeton professor. Quote, "We are in a cold civil war." What we've seen over the past few days may not actually be related to this potential civil war, except for El Paso. We assume that to be, for the most part, accurate. The Dayton shooting, for those that aren't familiar, I'm assuming you are familiar, but we had two shootings, El Paso, which was driven by a weird white identitarian balkanization ideology. The guy talked about splitting up the U.S. into regions based on race or something, but it was a white identitarian idea. Now that group, the white identitarian types, I don't think are necessarily dominant players in the culture war. However, it doesn't matter. It fuels the rise of the far left, which is more likely to be embraced by mainstream culture. What we saw in Dayton, Ohio, was a guy who carried out an act which seemingly makes no sense. We don't know his motivation. We do know the guy was very pro-Antifa, very far left, pro-democratic socialists, and all these things, but we don't know why he did what he did. I actually would lean towards right now saying it probably wasn't politically motivated. We just don't know. Simply because he had these ideologies doesn't mean he did it for any reason. The attack was seemingly random. At the same time, even though the guy in El Paso put out a manifesto, he went to a Walmart and shot a bunch of random people. It doesn't seem to make sense either. So I can't tell you I can't tell you that the rhetoric emerging from this is showing us that it doesn't matter who did what or why. What matters is that people are pushing their ideology, their fake news, their interpretation. All of this is resulting in a divide that can never be mended. And when you see two mass shootings, where the ideology behind both groups are elements of the growing cultural crisis, it starts to look like a civil war is coming into focus. I don't know what a civil war in this era would look like. I have said in the past, I hate using the word civil war specifically because people imagine like two groups marching towards each other, fighting over the government. Some kind of conflict is happening. Some kind of civil war, at least according to this Princeton professor. And I said before, what we're going to see is insurgency. And I think that's where we're walking into. I want to make a point before we get into, I got a ton of sources that I want to show you that freak me out. But I want to make one important point. I've said it before and I'll say it again. When we look at history, we are looking at bullet points condensed into single pages. When in reality, what led up to World War I and World War II happened over a long period of time. And it's probable that when the wars first started, actually it's a guarantee, when World War II first started, people didn't know it was World War II. They didn't call it World War II. The United States wasn't involved for quite some time until after Pearl Harbor. It's a very complicated situation. So the war is raging in Europe, And what are people in the US saying? Are they saying we are in World War II? No. When we look in the history books, they talk about what the US was doing at the time and how it led to what we now call World War II. It's a complicated process. But we could be in the Great Conflict. And in 50 years, they'll say the whole thing started in 2014 with Gamergate, or in 2011 with Occupy Wall Street, or in 2008 with the Great Recession. We don't know. We don't know how history will look back upon us. We can't see in front of us. But in 100 years, they may be talking about this great conflict. Now, it's entirely possible nothing happens. I have no idea. But it's starting to seem like the things I've been expecting to happen are happening. People of various ideologies carrying out extremist acts. One seems to be more cut and dry, one I'm not sure of. But when you stand back, regardless of what these people are claiming to do, you will have people just looking at the El Paso guy and blaming Trump. You will have people looking at the Dayton guy and blaming the left for refusing to address mental illness or for scaring this guy and freaking him out with left-wing ideology, of which he posted a ton of. This Princeton professor is targeting Trump. So I want to take a look at this, but before we do, I must stress, head over to timcast.com/donate if you'd like to support my work. There's a PayPal option, a crypto option, a physical address. The important thing here, YouTube has deranked independent political commentary. I guarantee you this video will not be monetized. It can't be. You know, and it's ridiculous considering CNN will cover the same stories. CNN will monetize in the same way, but YouTube won't allow it. And I will stress that I've asked you to share my videos if you like them, and I tried one day without doing it, and I saw the numbers take a massive hit. So I've actually done this back and forth to see like total number, trying to experiment. So I'm greatly appreciative of everybody who does share these videos because it really is solving the problem of YouTube deranking my channel and other channels. Let's get into the news and talk about, here's what I want you to envision. A year ago, I said I believe we are facing some kind of new civil conflict, some kind of urban crisis, a cultural crisis, whatever you want to call it. And we're seeing street battles and street violence. We're seeing the rhetoric escalate. And I don't know what form it'll take, but I think it's happening. Now it kind of feels like, to me, we're starting to see the image become clearer and clearer when you have these two incidents in one day with two people who held specific ideologies. I'm not talking about the motive right now. I understand the motive isn't clear. The one guy, it seems to be, although I don't think they've actually verified the manifesto, they believe it to be, for the most part, accurate. The other guy didn't have it. We don't know his motive yet. The point is, however, people will take it one way or another. That's the issue. Perception is reality. Let's read this story here about the Cold Civil War, and then I want to move on to the current news, and trust me when I say I'm putting these pieces together. Princeton professor Eddie Glaude Jr., responding on Sunday to the shooting deaths of at least 20 people in El Paso, Texas, said the U.S. is in the midst of a cold civil war. What happens when we use language like infestation? Glaude said on NBC's Meet the Press. You set the stage for people who are even more on the extreme to act violently. We are in a cold civil war, and there are some people who bear the burden of it. We have children in El Paso right now who just witnessed their friends and family members shot down because someone thinks there's a Hispanic invasion of the country, which is almost the exact same language of the President of the United States, he added. Now, this guy in El Paso was extremely lethal, and that's why fringe right-wing extremism is typically more dangerous and more deserving of government resources, and I've said it a million times. Of course, I'm pretty sure the far left doesn't care because I'm very critical of them. Why? The far left engages in low-level violence frequently. They're not very good at it. It's not particularly lethal. Though they do try. You know, they beat the crap out of people. So they get the focus because people won't call them out. This story is a perfect example. Let's break down what this guy said. He said, what happens when we use language like infestation? Let me rewind. What happens when we use language like concentration camp? Tim Pool said on his channel, you set the stage for people who are even more on the extreme to act violently. Sounds very similar to what I said a few days ago. We are in a...
I want to go ahead and stop that there. I'll put a link in the description below to the rest of this video if you want to check it out. But I just wanted to, like I said, get this out there. And basically, right, yeah, they're starting to realize that this race riot, this civil war in this country is about to kick off. So things are heating up out there. Where in the last seconds of the last days, So stay safe out there, stay prayed up, stay protected, and shalom.